Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have a tour guide with us today. Dr. John Lundwall has been on our show before talking about his book, Mythos and Cosmos, and he experienced this spring a trip to the Yucatan Peninsula where he was one of the tour guides. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Hi, Gene. Hi, Maven.
Yeah, so tell
Now
us about your trip. Go ahead, Maven.
Oh no, I was just gonna say we know that these kind of trips can be. There's kind of this Mormon niche of these trips where Mormons go on and they have a Mormon tour guide and just kind of pointing out all the things that have to do with the Book of Mormon. So this wasn't one of those. Then I'm assuming.
I would have more luck walking on my backyard and pointing out other things in the Book of Mormon. There is no Book of Mormon archaeology in.
Wow, I can't wait to go to your backyard and see all the artifacts.
Yeah, no, I have a 300-foot Mormon temple across the valley that you can see. So, yeah, there is no. We went to the Yucatan. It was called the Lost Cities of the Maya tour. And we went to Uxmal, Chichen Itza, Ekbalam, just a lot of cities. I'm going to show you some photographs that I took. All the photos are mine,
And they're beautiful, I must say. This isn't your uncle's photographs of their trip that are grainy, and yeah, these are really good. So I'm excited.
Thank you. I lug around an astro-modified camera around the world and take lots of photos. Sadly, I've got like tens of thousands. Do you guys know how to organize photos? Because I got so many now that sometimes I'll spend like 3 hours going through and I was like, man, I forgot I took these. And some of these are pretty good.
I feel like AI should be there soon. Where
wouldn't that be great?
I can't wait, honestly. And then you could just give them just put all the files in there and have it just notate everything, so you can just type in keywords and pull up exactly what that's what I'm hoping for. I'm sure it's just around the corner because I don't see how anything less than that is doable for me, and I don't even take that many pictures, so even more so for you.
I read a meme the other day. It said, I want AI to clean my house and do my laundry so I have more time to read and do art. But instead, AI reads for me and does the art. And I have more time to clean my house and do my laundry.
Yeah, the opposite of time saving from chores.
Yeah, anyway, the tour was, I took several graduate students from my graduate school. Actually, Renee Steelman and her husband, Tony, were on the trip. Delightful couple. We had many fun conversations. I'd have to say that's the closest to Mormonism we got, because we would sit in the evening and we stayed at the Hacienda Uxmal, which is really in the middle of the jungle. It's I don't know if you guys been to the Yucatan. Most people go to Mexico. They go to the coastal resorts. They're very nice, very touristy. That wasn't our trip. Our trip was the Hacienda Uxmal's out in the middle of the jungle. It's right next to the archeological site Uxmal, which is a big Mayan city. And we went in March, which isn't technically when you want to go to the Yucatan, because it was in the high 90s. 90% humidity, very hot. We went down there for a specific reason. You have to be there on the spring or fall equinox in order to witness what we were standing and witnessing. And so that's why we were there at that time. But fantastic trip. Actually, here in a couple weeks, I'll be doing a single day tour in Utah at some petroglyphs from the ancient Fremont. They would carve rock art. In fact, we're going to go over a couple of those on the slide deck today to show you how some of these ancient cultures used their, in this case, their rock imagery, their rock art, to align it with the sun on the solstices or equinoxes, and the purpose for that. So do you want to...
Is that open to other people joining? Is that something we should have a link for if people want to come, or is it something that's already full?
No, it's open. It'll probably be a small group because I I've started this really late. In fact, I haven't
Okay.
even launched it, but I can give you the link.
Okay. We'll have that
I'm
in
going
the
to be
show notes
down there
then.
anyway, so I thought, well, I should just bring some people.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, I think do
Back-
you want me to pull up the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get started here.
All right. So look, you guys asked me, why don't you just share some of your trip? I'm not, we spent 8 days down there and went to several sites. I'm only pulling up a few slides of a couple sites because, otherwise this would take a long time. And I get really excited about this stuff, so I can talk for hours on, oh, look at this and look at that. And isn't that amazing?
I think we have 28 slides just for the audience to know. It's not 50, it's not 100, and even if it was, like I said, he's a very good photographer, so it's definitely worth it to stick around and see these. These are amazing.
Maybe our show will inspire John DeLynn to do an 8-hour episode with you for like 400 slides.
That's funny, but when I teach a class at my graduate school, my slide deck does have a couple hundred slides. So that's those poor kids, or they're not kids.
I'm sure they love it.
All right, I'm just gonna blow through some of these. This is Mesoamerica, the Yucatan. I don't know. The
No,
Yucatan
the
is
mouse doesn't show.
a
This
portion.
was an interesting picture for John to take. He must have been up in a satellite.
Yeah, I didn't take this picture. I did augment this, but the green is basically the domain of the Maya. So and so the Yucatan is that protrusion out into the Gulf of Mexico that goes basically north south. The Yucatan is basically a very large limestone plate. So and you can dig 6 feet down and hit bedrock of this limestone plate. And because it's this big, huge slab of limestone, the water, the rain percolates down into it, forming thousands of little caverns and caves, which also fill up with water. They're called cenotes. And so you have thousands of little holes, depressions, caves throughout this region filled with water. And this was important for the Maya. In the upper left, you can see Uxmal. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. Chichen Itza there, those two green cities. We were traveling through that whole region of the Yucatan. I guess that's the narrow neck of land that some Mormon archaeologists or I don't know what they are. Apologists say it could be the Book of Mormon lands could be here. Unfortunately, I'll show you. There's nowhere to find the Lamanites or the Nephites down here. So why don't you hit the next slide? I guess I can hit the next slide. Here's the just a real basic timeline. When we talk about Maya culture, and today I'm going to be talking about Maya culture. First off, there are hundreds of different cultures in Mesoamerica in antiquity. So the Maya culture is a large group of city-states. There is no empire. Every city is its own city-state. It has its own king, has its own polity, but they make alliances. And so what you have for centuries then is more powerful city-states controlling other city-states. It's controlled through trade, it's controlled through warfare, it's controlled through marriage. The Book of Mormon again gives a model of a centralized government with the judges. There's a great judge and lesser judges. There's no political structure like that in ancient Mesoamerica.
Can I ask if was part of this because of the difficulty of travel? Because they weren't in chariots, they didn't have wheeled.
Yeah, the train.
Is that right?
They didn't have pack animals. Had they had pack animals, the train is difficult, but any culture that has pack animals that has massive amounts of trade, they figure out a way to pull their trade with pack animals. In South America, they had llamas, and you can't domesticate them to pull wagons. Also, that the terrain, the topography in South America really is prohibitive.
Yeah.
In Mesoamerica, you actually have thousands of miles of roads that they built, and they would, build just these long roads, build up from from the ground, a couple feet of rock. But those roads were used by walking on them because they carried their goods on their heads and in backpack. And
Okay, that was my understanding why like things in the Americas didn't quite go or progress in a way similar to what we see in the East, partly for that reason, because travel was basically limited to walking. It would be much harder to have empires or central governments like that because the travel was so much more prohibitive, even with the roads that they had. Am I understanding that right? That I mean, at least in my mind, when you're talking about these little city-state structures, that's about as big for the most part as they could get.
Well, when I say city-states, some of them are massive. Teotihuacan had a population of 100,000 people at the time. That's probably the biggest city in the world. They did have the Maya.
But as far as having far reach, like across,
right. So without pack animals, civilization develops differently.
Sorry,
As a
I
result, you get
derailed.
As a result, you get huge differences. This is all part of how cultures grow and develop. So there were no horses, there were no chariots. If there were horses and chariots, you'd see them in the iconography on the walls. In the old world, that represented the power of kingship, right? They would carve the king on his chariot being pulled by the horses everywhere. You go
Even
to Egypt
today,
and there's what's that?
Even today, the sport of kings is horse racing, right?
Right. You don't see that anywhere. In fact, there's the limited writing you do see in Mesoamerica is about a great deal of it is about the kings. There's tons of war scenes in the murals and then in on the stelas. Yeah, you would see horses, kings on chariots all over the place, but you don't see any of that ever because there were none. They would travel. There was a group of traders. It was sort of like their own little religious cult, and they would travel hundreds of miles. So you could have trade networks in this region. But again, you can only carry what you can physically carry. It would take you months to traverse from the north end to the south end doing your trades. And so this does introduce, a different kind of dynamic.
I think
limitations.
The cult was called the multi-level Mayan marketers. That's what I think it was.
Multi-level Mayan, MMM. The M's. In the rock art of the American Southwest, you often see images of traders, and they're just people carrying backpacks. And no doubt they're coming up from Mexico and Mesoamerica into North America and vice versa. So we like to kind of put little borders around these different cultures and say, well, here's this culture and here's that culture. But there's a lot of, trade that does go along, even in small tribal cultures, such as the Fremont, Utah, which is a culture group I study. Some of their villages will have trade goods that come from the Pacific coast, will come from all the surrounding states, come from the Great Plains. And you realize what these people at least have networks of trade. But, one of the things North American cultures never had was not only no pack animals, but no riding. Generally, riding is a product, or it's not a product, but it comes with urbanization. When you start getting tens of thousands of people living in a city state, you need a way to manage that, to collect taxes, to count the trade. And so riding is the tool that develops most of the time with that kind of urbanization. When I say most of the time, I know of one example where urbanized city states uniting into an empire occurs without writing, and that's the Inca in South America. They never had writing. There's no writing in South America, no writing, pre-Columbian writing. In North America,
named after ink, didn't have writing.
They had quipu knots. So they did have a way to tabulate taxes.
Right, business. They could do business.
They could do business. They could keep calendars using little knots in textile cords. sort of like a textile abacus. So they did have a method to do it.
John, on your tour, what time periods were you guys able to see?
Yeah, I got to get moving. So we are looking at, well, actually, we're looking at the post-classic. We're going to look at several slides from Chichen Itza, and Chichen Itza, is a post-classic site. It grew to prominence between 9 and 1200 CE. So it was, built prior to that. But when you talk, this is basically a Mayan timeline where you have the classic culture is sort of the flowering, where you get these big, gorgeous city states and stelas and art, large scale, sophisticated art, and that tends to be in the classic period between 250 BCE or 250 CE to 900 CE. Then there's a Mayan collapse that occurs around 9th century CE, where there's massive migrations that occur. The demographics shift, and that can be tracked, where millions of people suddenly are missing from the old cities. Again, there's many different arguments as to why the Maya civilization sort of transforms and collapses at that point. There's definitely famine, climate change, civil war, and external war. And in fact, Chichen Itza has a lot of Toltec influence. So this is a different culture from central Mexico that's coming down and dominating the region. We're in the classic and post-classic period. All right, here is Chichen Itza. This is why I'm going down there. I'm going down there for several reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is the temple of Kukulkan. Kukulkan is plumed serpent, and there is a plumed serpent deity throughout the different cultures in Mesoamerica. There is a canon of belief, so you get different cultures, different languages, even different dialects, but there is a broad canon of belief shared between all these cultures. And so the plumed serpent.
When you say plumed serpent, is that another way to say a feathered serpent?
Yes, feathered serpent. Feathered serpent. In the Popol Vuh, there are a couple prominent deities. Heart of the Sky is in the sky. He's actually represented by the constellation Orion. There is a primordial serpent in the sea, and you get this combination of the eternal deep, the sea, and the sky that form together to create the midworld. This is very ubiquitous in ancient oral cultures. In this temple, actually, the surrounding plaza, that grassy area, really was a representation of the sea. And the top of that pyramid's the temple representation of the sky. And so this is a cosmograph. Here's a picture of...
I wanted to know how long it took you to run up those stairs.
They don't let you go up those stairs anymore, but actually some of them are, these temples can be very steep. So I'm thinking, wow, these guys were in shape. They were all 5 feet tall and had a low center of gravity. And
yeah. That's me.
That's you. I'm 6'4".
Maven the Mayan.
I don't know about low center of gravity, but
here's a picture where you have these large serpents coming down the stairs, the tails up top, the heads down below. Ultimately, we went there for this phenomenon. So on the equinoxes, the sun, as it sets in the west, casts a shadow off the corner of these steps and creates this undulating shadow down the body of the serpent. So the head's down at the bottom left.
That's cool.
Tail
that
up.
Is cool.
Tail at the upper right. And so then as the sun moves, it starts in the late afternoon and the shadow undulates.
Marches down.
Sorry,
so you're saying that a broken Mayan clock works twice a year. Even a broken Mayan clock.
Mayan clock. So that's why I was there. I was there to photograph that. Yeah. And so, fantastic. Our tour group was at Chichen Itza on the equinox. And of course, it was cloudy all day. So it's
I
so
think
what
was this the
there it is.
second picture you were looking for? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I got him a little out of order.
So you can see the shadows moved up, but as you sit there and watch it, it shifts and undulates through the time. And of course, if it's cloudy, then you don't get to see the phenomenon. So when you say it works twice a year, well, maybe it's. But the truth is, this phenomenon happens a few days before the equinox,
Right.
a
Over a
few
certain
days
period of
after the
time.
equinox. But in any case, here's an image of the divine connecting the sky to the earth, the sun to the sea.
Right. It's very poetic.
Yes. So that's why we were there in March. So this is what I do. I'm going to show a couple slides that weren't on the tour, but your guests might enjoy them. This is in Utah. This is in the Colorado Plateau, northeastern Utah.
So you're going to compare and contrast right
I
now?
am comparing and contrasting because this isn't Mayan. However, some of the image, this figure right here is a really unique image. You see the red painted figure on the left on that rock face. This is a pictograph. He's about 3 feet tall. He's in this canyon wash. Here's the other side of that little canyon wash. You have a little notch on the upper left in the rock. And when the sun rises on the summer solstice, so the Temple of Kukulkan is an equinox alignment. This guy at the summer solstice, when the sun rises, the light of the sun pours through that crack and casts on the wall. It fills this guy's headdress perfectly at sunrise. And
Wow.
so that is that's done on purpose. But if you stand there and watch as the sun rises, the light shifts on the rock face, and a few minutes later, that chevron of light wraps his curved staff. Do you see that?
Oh.
And a
Yeah,
few
it's
minutes,
much lighter. Yeah, like in white, kind of.
yeah, this his left arm has this curved staff coming out of it. In fact, his arm is the staff. This figure often holds that it's a rain staff, and he often holds a staff, but on this figure, his arm is the staff. And so when we saw that, we said, well, that's unusual. Why is the staff his curved arm? But then when you stand there at summer solstice and watch that sun fill his headdress, and then it slides down, and then it wraps his staff, and then it slides down, and he ends up standing on the shadow line. His right leg is actually twice as long as his left leg. You realize that they've used this sun shadow line on summer solstice as the template to paint this figure, its size, its proportion, and its position on the rock face. So that entire figure is painted based off the sun shadow line at the summer solstice. And we know this we know this isn't accidental. We've photographed, this happens right at sunrise, so you have to be standing there at 6 a.m. We photographed it every day for 30 days before the solstice, and that gives us 60 days of data because the sun will drift to the north, stop at the solstice at its northern position, and then start rising back to the south. And so if you photograph 30 days before the solstice, you have the 30 days before the solstice and the 30 days after the solstice. It's the same data. But then we were there throughout the year photographing it. So this alignment that I just showed you, it only occurs 3 days before the solstice 3 days after the solstice. And then it doesn't occur. So
Do you
that
know
is what's that?
like why they did this? Why it was important?
So why exactly? It's basically for the same reason why the Maya built their serpent on their temple to catch the equinoctial sun. First off, it is a calendar implement. When that alignment happens, it's summer solstice, and they have all these rituals around the summer solstice. But its calendric aspect is secondary. the primary purpose they're doing this, there's a tradition that these images are living, breathing images of the divine, that they are bringing divine powers from the eternal world into the tribe, into their agriculture, into their political culture, into their religious culture. When this image aligns with the sun, it becomes a living, breathing entity. It is a solar deity. The power of Father Son is exhibited, is manifest at this moment in time. And so if you do your ritual there when this is happening, you are participating with the cosmos, and you are taking the powers of Father Son back into your agricultural cycle.
So is there like a level area below it where people would do dance and other?
Not
other
at this
things?
site. No.
Okay.
Now they would do those kinds of rituals, but this site probably had a sun priest who simply watched for this moment. Their primary calendar, by the way, is lunar. And so you don't want. So we have found several of these panels that have these solar alignments, and this one's pretty tight. A 7-day alignment. That's all you've got. Most of the time, you get a broader range where it's 2 or 3 weeks, and you actually want a broad range, because when the phenomenon starts happening on the rock, then these cultures tend to say, all right, on the next full moon, we'll do our ritual. Well, the next full moon.
A lunar calendar is not a very good stopwatch.
Yeah. The next full moon might be 1 or 2 weeks away, right? You need some lead time, but this is a very tight alignment. So they did, this is a fertility figure, and this is also a headhunting figure. And they did rain rituals during the summer solstice. You plant all your crops in April, May, in these high desert altitudes. You do a series of plantings, right? Because you don't know which ones are going to work. But by June, you're at the heat of summer. June, July, August is pretty
like
brutal in these desert climes. And so at the solstice, you do all your rainmaking ceremonies, hoping that the rains come to water the plants. Some of these sites are dry cropping, as in they plant the seeds 18 inches deep. That's it. They don't water them. They grow based off what moisture they can get. Several of the sites, however, were irrigated, so they would water them. So the fields are near streams and rivers. So they had different strategies, but they are doing rain-making ceremonies. That's why that guy's carrying that rain staff. They're doing rain-making ceremonies at the summer solstice. All right, here's a black and white image. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, the labels are kind of small. But underneath his curved staff is a little lump of gray, and actually, we didn't see that for a year because it is so faded; it's become invisible. But what you're looking at is a scalp, a human scalp, underneath his left arm. Again, in these cultures, the head, when a woman gives birth, the first thing that happens is her water breaks. And the first thing that appears out of the womb is the head. And the head contains all the divine functions: sight, hearing, smell, speech. So if you want to offer something to the gods to bring rain, you offer it parallel in the human world, which is the head that is produced by waters, with the woman's water breaking. So there's all these analogical reasons that the human head is the divine thing that can be offered in exchange for divine rain. That at least is some of the thinking behind connecting rainmaking and head taking. We have no idea how often they did this. If this ritual, there are head taking motifs throughout this entire region, so they are doing it. But we don't have the context as to how often this happened. Was this monthly? Was this yearly? Was this every 8 years? We don't know.
As needed in extreme times.
Right, as
needed.
Maybe. So, that is a very good point, Maven. Between about 900 and 1200 CE, there is a period of warming that brings more rain. And so you have this flowering of agriculture in the American Southwest in this time period because the rain season is longer and the winters are shorter. And then in the 13th century, that changes. Actually, there's a 50-year drought. You know, when you're an agricultural village society and you experience a 50-year drought, it's devastating.
Yeah.
And so you largely irrecoverable. But this happens between 13 and 1400. I mean, the dates are slightly different depending on locations. It corresponds roughly to the Little Ice Age in Europe, right? So there is a climactic shift that is happening globally, and it manifests here in the American Southwest as a large drought. Winters are now longer. It's actually the weather that we're used to. You have longer, hotter summers, longer, colder winters, less precipitation for these high desert altitude communities growing maize, which is what they're growing, which is, by the way, coming up from Mesoamerica. This head hunting is coming up from Mesoamerica. In fact, that headdress is probably coming up from Mesoamerica. In any case, it becomes very difficult. And so around 1300, almost all the Fremont villages are abandoned throughout the entire region. And then what you end up getting is the pueblos of Arizona, New Mexico that are built. People come together, build these walled communities, and unite their resources. It also suggests that there is some very serious raiding that's going on, so that there is violence that is taking place. And again, this is argued about, but when resources are really tight and you can't grow crops anymore, then it creates all kinds of pressures. Anyway, that's the transformation of the American Southwest. Let's get back to the Yucatan. This is the ball court at Chichen Itza. Most Mayan cities had a ball court in the city. It was an architectural requirement. And this is the largest ball court in all of Mesoamerica. It's Colosseum level. And what you have is this large alley where the game was played largely on the grass between these walls. There are these stone serpents on either side. There's stone rings. Let's see if you can see the serpent that runs down and the stone ring up on the wall. They had a rubber ball that you could not hit with your hands. You had to hit it with your legs and your hips. Some versions, you had to knock the ball through that stone ring. So you would have a player up here on this ledge. You'd have players down in the grass.
On top of the ledge?
Yeah.
And it's so tiny to see, but so just for viewers if they haven't seen it, because I feel like the snakehead is most prominent. But up along where the ledge meets the sky,
middle of the picture.
follow that,
feet wide.
You'll find the ring. So so there's I guess a goalie, I would almost think at the top.
Well, right. So I don't know if I have.
Or like standing on the snake like that, standing
on the snake. Most of the ball courts have a much longer, elongated.
These were overgrown a few hundred years ago.
Yeah, in the late 1800s, this was all forest, rainforest. It was most of the structures were totally overgrown. In fact,
was it like unknown to civilization for like 600 years, or about how long?
Centuries. It gets it collapses. Well, ironically, by the time the European Spanish get here, most of these city-states collapse. It's hard to know, but they estimate between 60 and 90% of the indigenous populations died from disease when the Spanish arrived. The Western world developed its own biodome, which is really interesting. For thousands of years, then it had its own collection of viruses and germs that was not anywhere. And this happens, right? So this happened in the old world, the Black Death, the Black Plague. That's the same thing, but it didn't affect. Well, that was about half the population. Well, 30 to 50% of the population of Europe died from the Black Plague. This happened in Africa. It had its own biodome. Most Europeans, when they went there, stayed on board. They didn't go into the interior because the average life expectancy of a European in Africa was a month. No one had resistance to malaria. So
it almost makes you wonder, had we not had vaccines and other health restrictions, what COVID would have looked like a few hundred years ago, as far as decimating.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, right. This is so devastating to the Americas. No one knew anything about germs or viruses, but when 90% of your population perishes, I mean, that's apocalyptic. It's apocalyptic.
Yeah. We've gotten way off base.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I think you were saying like the snake platform was normally like longer, because this looks super narrow to be standing on.
Yeah, no. So this ball court is kind of its own thing. It's massive. It doesn't look like you're going to be spending a lot of time standing on that ledge. So, we're not exactly and not all the ball games were the same, and we don't actually understand how the ball games worked. We know that there were priests on either end that would actually prognosticate astrological models based off the ball game, right? And so this is a ritual event. This is a religious event. This is an astrological event. This is a political event, and it's intermixed with the city. The ball court represents the entrance to the underworld. That's also part of Mayan cosmology. So
in a way, it's almost like when the apostles wanted to pick a new apostle, they cast their lots, right? They sort of gambled. Right. They did something. The Mayans were using the outcome of this sporting event to like predict the future, or
yes, but very often, sometimes the outcome was already pre-known because you would have professional teams playing against captives or non-professional teams, and so then it becomes very difficult to win. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters. Here is the center of the walls in this ball court. You get a ball playing scene, and there's a figure on the left, and in his left hand, what's he holding? He's holding a human head. Do you see that?
Oh yeah.
And then the figure on the right, he's missing his head, and you have all these serpents coming out of his neck. Do you see that?
Oh yeah.
That's
wild.
And the ball itself is that big circular motif,
head.
And it's a head. So the ball is a head, and they're symbolically playing with the head. It appears that sometimes the losers would be beheaded. The serpents coming out of the neck is a fertility motif. The head is bringing rain. The head is bringing fertility to both the crops and the culture. So
brings new meaning into keep your head in the game.
That's true. That's very good. So it's a very similar concept to that pictograph we were just looking at in Utah, where they're taking heads to bring rain. This is a very similar concept because, in fact, that concept is probably coming up from Mexico into the American Southwest. When maize was domesticated, a religion was invented, and wherever maize went, the religion of maize went with it. Actually, it's probably better to say wherever the religion of maize went, maize was a byproduct.
I won't say that's amazing, but we'll go on.
Hey, Maven, how do you put up with this? This is it. This is dad jokes the entire show.
Yeah, it is.
Basically.
Keeps
That's very good, Gene. All right. This is a major deity in Mayan culture. This is a chalk tower. Chalk was their rain god. And it's kind of hard to see, but his face is in the corner of that tower. Here he is. This is Uxmal. And do you see the chalk faces rising up the center of that stone frieze? You have his eyes.
The 2 circles.
The 2 circle are his eyes. He has this long, protruding nose. It's a long curved nose. It's like a proboscis on a bee or on a bat. But that is just his iconography. And he often has fang teeth, scales. He's associated with the underworld, and his image is ubiquitous throughout. I mean, every Mayan city you go to, there are images of chalk and chalk temples. He's the rain deity. This is in Kaaba, where there's a chalk temple, and the entire temple has has chalk faces built on it. It's really quite stunning. I took this image in black and white. Here you can see his long curved nose coming out of his face. And I mean, that's just an artistic shot. It's pretty good. Good job.
Yeah.
It is. These pictures really are amazing. They really, really are. And it
So
tells the nose better, like from the profiles. That's
So as my 13-year-old self sees that nose and thinks that those are the boogers coming down.
there's some sort of cosmological significance to it. In Uxmal, one of their temples is a chalk temple oriented to the northeast. And what we know is they were watching Venus as evening star. And when it appeared north of the equinoctial point, that began their rain season. So chalk is a deity associated with Venus and associated with the agricultural cycle and the rain cycle. And of course, he's the rain deity. So when you go to these cultures, again, to these peoples, truth is cosmic fact. They're looking at all the relationships between the sky, earth, rain, seasons, agriculture, and that's their religion. And so they're watching, in some aspects, what you're seeing here in the movement of Venus as an evening star is a manifestation of Chalk, the rain deity.
That's right. You know what makes me think there is that in modern religions, we say heaven is skyward, right? And we just think of it as the clouds billowing and God is on a throne somewhere up there. But the heavens back then were things that were happening in the sky that were controlling stuff on earth.
It's a very ubiquitous, that is correct. It's a very ubiquitous thinking. Ancient cultures thought cosmologically and astrologically. Astrology was normal human thinking. It was scientific human thinking for thousands of years. In fact, we stopped thinking that way just a couple centuries ago. And, when you, for tens of thousands of years, your ancestors, everybody is surviving in the land by watching these heaven-earth correspondences, then you create a system where it's these correspondences that control that are the universe. And so this is how these cultures thought, and that the transformation of thought slowly.
Is this a recreation we're looking at?
Yeah, this is a traditional Mayan hut. This is what most Mayan people would live in. But interestingly enough, the Mayan hut had a 3-stone hearth. So you see these 3 stones in the lower right. And then we actually on our trip had a traditional Mayan breakfast where they cooked the food in the 3-stone hearth. You can see how they feed the sticks between the stones. And then they'll put a plate of some sort on the stones and cook on top of it.
That's almost like a technological advancement at some point. You got the good air, the air feeding the fire, and then you have the place for cooking.
Yeah. What's really interesting is that those 3 stone represents 3 stars in the sky. This is heart of sky. So this is the constellation Orion. We look at the belt of Orion, but the bottom 2 stars and one of the belt stars form a triangle, and that's what these 3 stones are. Every Mayan house had a constellation built into it. That was your fire hearth that warmed the hut and provided the food. So heart of sky was a deity, like chalk was a star. These deities all have celestial correspondences, which are built into the structures, into the religious thinking of the entire culture. Where do you find that in the Book of Mormon, by the way? You don't. You don't. This is a completely different epistemological framework of thinking and of religiosity. And so, when you realize that all these pre-Columbian cultures operate in this way of thinking, and then you read the Book of Mormon, you realize, no, the Book of Mormon comes from centuries of literate thinking where God has been decoupled from nature, from the sky and from the earth, and basically has been transferred into an analytical thought of redemption, fall. This is not something you find in the concepts of pre-Columbian cultures. So,
and that's the thing with the Book of Mormon. A lot of people like to point to the anachronistic items that are out of time in the Book of Mormon, but actually there's anachronistic things that are not in the Book of Mormon that you have to think about as well.
Every page of the Book of Mormon is anachronistic. Every page, because it's rooted in abstracted, analytical, literate religion. That's what late Christianity is, post-Reformation Christianity, and that world didn't exist in the Americas, pre-Columbian Americas. So, and it existed, it actually didn't exist in 600 BCE when Lehi and Nephi left Jerusalem. The first temple Israelite priests also had this world here.
Yeah.
They also were watching the stars. They were dancing. They
chanting.
thought cosmologically. Yes, this is it, what we're looking at. So the story of Lehi and Nephi is anachronistic, and the entire text becomes an anachronism from first to last.
Got it.
All right. Here is, by the way, this is Chichkamuk we went to some of these jungle sites, and you can see that this has actually been rebuilt, but the trees are still growing all over it.
Wow.
In that right door, there's actually some there's some paint that survives on the ceiling from a Mayan mural, but it just gives you a sense that surrounding this are just hills that you can see the stones protruding from them, but it's basically jungle. And what you're looking at is buildings that just haven't been excavated or reconstructed. Sure enough, the vast majority of it is just underneath rainforest.
So you're saying if we go back to the previous one, they're built into the mountain. So it's not just that they haven't been excavated all the way, but like this is how it was built.
Well, I'm just saying most of the structures are covered in rainforest. They haven't been excavated or rebuilt. And so they're just covered in brush and trees. Most of them, the structures have collapsed. You get all the trees growing on them, and the roots penetrate into the rock, and they start collapsing. Water, right? And so,
who rebuilds them? Do you mean like modern archaeologists, or you mean?
Yeah, sometimes modern archaeologists say you will get buildings that survive. Most of the big pyramids had to be rebuilt. And so, sometimes they're a little bit more careful than other times when they rebuild them. You have this huge pile of rocks under trees, and you have to try to reconstitute it. So literally,
no blueprints.
No. Well, I mean, so you have enough that survive that you know what they're doing.
Right.
And so you can try to, they've gotten very good actually at reconstituting these buildings, but
like shards of pottery, I think that's broken. There's enough there that if you can fit the pieces together, you can get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I just have a couple more slides. This is in Ekbalam. And I'm not showing you the big pyramid that you actually can climb. We climb those steps. But this is a stela. It's a royal stela. This is how, for the most part, the Mayan kept their history. They didn't have metal plates that they wrote 1,000-year histories on in narrative form. Rather, every king of a city-state would erect 3, 5, 7, 9 stelas, and that is what people would remember them by. And every stela would have there they are. You got 4 rows of glyphs on it, and that gives you a date, it gives you a name, and it gives you an event that's being commemorated. Okay, so that stela there. I'm
It's
trying
like
to
their
remember.
legacy.
That's their legacy. That's their history, right there.
I'm thinking of doing that for myself.
That's right. So I'm trying to remember the name of this king. It's like 4 pumpkin jaguar warrior or something like that. I've got it in my notes, but I have to read it. But that was his name. The event being commemorated is he's expanded this pyramid complex. The events would be their birth dates, their marriage dates, because these are astrological too, right? They're significant to the Mayan culture and calendar system. But this is what you get. You don't get these long narratives in the Book of Mormon. You get this right here. This is it.
No gold
And
plates.
then I'm going to end. I've only got 28 slides, so I'm going to end on this last slide. This is one of these royal stelas, but it is literally this thing, by the way, is about 9 feet tall, and that tree is literally swallowing it
That's amazing looking.
in its
Wow.
roots. Now, it turns out that picture I took, but that is in Calakmul. So I took that like 25 years ago when I was in Calakmul. And I just wanted to end on this story because here you are. This is a king right here, this stela. And it's in front of a pyramid that's completely collapsed. And his royal stela, which was supposed to stand for eternity, is being swallowed by a tree. But what was so cool about this story is I was taking a picture of it. And by the way, I had a 35 millimeter camera, not a digital camera. So, you have to be really selective on which pictures you have because you only have so many rolls of film with you. And about 50 yards away from this tree was another tree that when I first saw it, it looked like it was moving through the forest. I was like, what is going on? So I walked up to the tree, and the closer I got, the more I realized what was going on. And that was there was a line of 1,000,000 ants, and they were going up the tree and stripping it. Every leaf, the bark, they were stripping the tree entirely. So there was this huge line of ants going up the tree and a huge line of ants going down the tree carrying twigs and leaves. And they were going off into the forest. And I couldn't get a picture of it because I had my 35. There was no way to capture what was actually going on in this moment. I needed a video camera to try to the essence of it. But then, it just hit me. 50 yards behind me, I have a king being swallowed by a tree. And right in front of me, I have a tree being swallowed by an ant. And
The circle of life.
that is just it. It is the circle of life. No matter, it's sobering. It's beautiful
Yeah.
in a way, but all things succumb to this, great circle of life. And when I say succumb, they also are born out of this great circle of life. And so in any case, I think of the great powers and the great, our world today has so many problems with it. And sometimes I think, how's this all going to get resolved? It seems so intractable. And then I think, oh, well, eventually it's all going to be swallowed by a tree.
Right.
In any case, that's my slideshow.
Well, thank you very much.
That was awesome. Thanks for sharing with us. And I think that I don't know. I don't have any follow up. Do you like questions from it? I that was just an amazing journey and a nice ending. I almost want to keep it there.
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
good?
all I can think of is that the phoenix rising from the ashes, the destructive gods and the building gods. You know, there has to be creative destruction, sort of always. And
Mhm.
everyone looks and just think about the pending doom in the future, and they don't think about maybe the phoenix that's going to arise out of catastrophe or just change in the civilization that we might experience in the future. So yeah, is
No, that's a
there
good
any
point.
last things, John? Are you going to do one every year?
Uh, you know, I think the last tour I did was pre-COVID. So this is my first tour that I've done after COVID. So I will definitely do more in the future. I'm glad life's getting back. The tour I did in 2019 was Chaco Canyon. That also is fantastic. So
Is that in Colorado or
New Mexico.
New Mexico?
New Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere. Actually, there's no paved road to it. And it's the largest
Oh, it's
archaeological
it's a
site in
hiking
North
one.
America.
Oh, we'll have to get you for that then next, or at least before then, so we can get more people on it with you, and then an after maybe to get more
Yeah.
amazing pictures like this.
Chaco's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. And so your Fremont, your upcoming one, we'll have that in the show notes, and yeah, hopefully we'll be having you back again to go over more of this stuff. Thanks again, Dr. Lundwall, John.
All right.
Thanks for coming
Thank
on the
you.
show.
Thanks for having me.
The reason why I keep on having Dr. John Lundwall on is because he laughs at my jokes. But anyway,
Then they're
thanks
not bad.
again. Like and subscribe and laugh at my jokes, everyone out there in viewing land. We ask everybody to have a good waiting for the summer solstice
Summer solstice. Yep.
coming
Yeah.
up. Okay. So when the summer solstice hits, everybody think of Dr. John. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.